Hello, good morning. Well, it was nice to have Anakin lift that up for me because he was in grade 6 when I started here. I think grade 6, right? Yeah. And he grew taller than me, unfortunately. Never thought it would happen. I thought he was the one who wouldn't, but he did. Anyways, well, thank you for having me today. As I reflected on what I wanted to share this morning, I came to this conclusion that I thought it would be fun to share some stories. And to share on a theme that's been important to me, a passage that's spoken to my heart over these years, and it's hopefully impactful to you as well. It's quite ironic that 9 years ago, minus 2 days, I signed my contract to join Lakeside Church after a service here. But I signed it on one condition before that. I was told I must come and attend a service at Lakeside before I sign my contract. Been through the whole interview process, but I'd never been to the church. I said, might as well. I got to check it out, make sure I like it. And so Brianna and we decided we would sneak up one Sunday morning, go undetected, try to sneak in a back door or something, find a seat and enjoy a service. Well, that became impossible. We showed up here at the church, and Lakeside is full of so many friendly people. There was, hey, you're new here, welcome. Why are you here this morning? We're so grateful to have you. If you're looking for the washroom, it's this way. Our kids' ministry's out. Everyone knew we were new. And we thought, this is a big church. It's easy to sneak in, but it wasn't. People were so welcoming. I remember one conversation in particular where someone came to us and they said, I see that you guys are new here. What brought you to Lakeside today? And I said, well, we are potentially moving to Guelph. Oh, that's so exciting. What's bringing you to Guelph? Well, maybe a new job. Oh, where are you going to be working? And I said, my cover is blown. We are going to be working here actually at Lakeside. And that was just the beginning of the many conversations we had, feeling so welcomed into our Lakeside community. And the flies still never left. Oh my gosh. From the first Sunday here, we knew something was different about this. And I can describe the difference I felt at Lakeside as this. This church has always had a deep love for those who weren't already part of the community. We have had a love for those outside of the walls of our building, welcoming others in over and over again. And I can truly say the loving embrace I have felt over my years at Lakeside, I haven't felt anywhere else. And so this theme I wanted to share with you today is about the significance and the power of loving one another. Because I believe it's the greatest thing we can do in life is to love well. And if you don't believe that this is true, just look at the box office. Every movie is either about people falling in love or saving those that they love. Love is powerful and love is important. But as you may have experienced, love isn't always at the forefront of our lives. It's not always what our experience is. And especially lately, I believe. Throughout this pandemic, we've experienced a collective trauma, a collective struggle of turning inward, right? When things go hard, we fight for survival. It's been a difficult time, so we turn inward and we become selfish in some healthy ways, but selfish also in some unhealthy ways, right? Our priority became to take care of ourselves to those around us. And it made it harder to relate to others. We became more greedy, as we saw with toilet paper disappearing. We became more prideful and those sort of things. And I believe it can lead us actually to move away from love instead of towards us. But I believe that each and every one of us deeply craves love and actually deeply craves to give and share love with others as well. Don't you think that's true? Love is so important to all of us. And because my experience here has been one of love, I want to share a bit about some things that Jesus said just briefly and actually share a bit about this community because I believe this community has love written into its very DNA, and I'm excited to share some of that. And so I'm going to be sharing a bit from the book of John today. It's my favorite book of the Bible because it's all about Jesus, but also I think it mostly focuses on this theme of love. And so I want to just look at a couple verses today that can be described as Jesus' farewell discourse. Not because I think I'm Jesus and I'm saying farewell, but because it's just a beautiful passage. But also focusing on one of his final prayers also. So we'll be in John chapter 13, and I've just broken this one of these verses 34 to 35 down into a couple sections for us. And so here's the first section, John 13:34. It says, "A new command I give you, love one another." So difficult, isn't it? I love the way D.A. Carson talks about this command. He says, "The new command is simple enough for a toddler to memorize and appreciate, yet profound enough that the most mature believers are repeatedly embarrassed at how poorly they comprehend it and put it into practice. Love one another. It's so simple. Love one another. Great. I already memorized it. That's super simple. But it's actually really hard. How do we love people who are different than us? People who constantly make mistakes or do wrong? How do we love people who annoy us and bother us? Speaking of people who annoy us, it actually reminds me of my years working with junior highs. Working with those in grades 6 to 8. My first few years here, I spent working directly with middle schoolers. As I said, Anakin was one of them. And if you want to learn how to grow in love with people and grow in patience, work with middle schoolers. But here's the thing. There's also so many significant things you can learn about love from our middle school students. You know, aside from the countless hours running around this building and other buildings and our downtown location, you know, keeping kids from trouble and pranks and they're sneaking their first kisses, there was also so much beauty. I saw these kids from different schools, different socioeconomic demographics, different races, different, groups, different styles, all coming together and becoming friends who wouldn't normally have been friends, but because of one common denominator, they experienced the love of Jesus together in community, and they became this amazing group of friends, many of them still friends today. And it was amazing because not only did people love them, but they loved their friends. And one of the biggest and most significant things for a young person is not, do you love me, but do you also love my friends? And I got to see that happen over and over, the power and beauty of seeing the ones you love being loved by others. And do you know how this happened? I think it's because we had some amazing volunteers. Some of you had an amazing impact on the lives of these young people in our church. And I've been absolutely floored over the years by seeing how well our leaders and volunteers have loved young people. I witnessed so many people pour countless hours into the lives of the next generation. So just to see lives change, to see relationships flourish, to see healing and health. I mean, my own kids, I've been so blessed. When I came here, my oldest was 1 year old and I didn't have any other kids. Now I have 3, my oldest is 10, and they've been so blessed by so many of you pouring into their lives. And we're so grateful for how you've blessed our family, how you consistently love those who are younger than you. And can I just shout out all of the seniors in our church as well? It's been so beautiful to see your faithfulness and longevity as well through the years I've been here, to see how you faithfully pursue the others and love on them. So thank you so much for that. And it's been so beautiful to see that. But I think we're also currently living in a time, as I said, where it's easy to love less. And so I want to encourage you on how do we love more? How do we love more? How do we do that? How do we love like Jesus? Well, the second part of the verse goes like this. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. Again, he says, love one another. But what's the qualifier this time? Just as Jesus loves. There's a guy right in this story of Jesus sharing this. If you look at the verses around it, Jesus has a conversation with a guy named Peter. Well, Peter was one of Jesus' followers, and Jesus is saying, my time is coming to an end, and things are going to end. Peter says, no, it's not. I won't let that happen. I'll fight for you. And Jesus is like, Peter, you're going to deny me. You're going to abandon me. You're going to say you don't even know me. And Peter's like, no, I won't. And then he does. Or he's like, oh, Jesus, never heard of the guy. He's like, weren't you with him for a bunch of years? Nope, never seen him in my life. And then later on, Jesus reinstates Peter, and they have this relationship brought back together. But before that, Jesus gave his life. He died to give Peter and all of us life and relationship with him. And so when we say this, when Jesus is saying this, as I have loved you, so love others, and we look at minor inconveniences and disagreements on worldviews as a reason not to love someone, I think we've missed the point. When Jesus is actually willing to give his entire life for those who reject him, who hurt him, and who leave him in his hardest times. Another beautiful way I've seen this happen as well is while I was working with our high school students. Weekly I held back tears because dozens and dozens of teens came out for more than just dodgeball. They came out because they found community. They found safety. They found life, and they found that through people who cared and loved them just for who they were. And I also had the amazing blessing of running a Celebrate Recovery program for teens for a few years, where young people could work through their hurts, habits, and hang-ups and experience life change. Why were they able to do this? I believe because there was a safe place and safe people who said, I love you just as you are, and I'm going to welcome you as you are. You don't have to change and become someone you're not in order to be welcome into this community. And Lakeside, that has been part of your DNA through the years, part of who you truly are. And this has actually impacted me deeply. Do you know how rare it is for a pastor to say, I have so many people in this church who I know my whole life, who I have deep, committed relationships with, who I feel safe with, who I feel loved by. So thank you for changing my life. I feel so blessed by you all. And so one of the best ways we can love like Jesus is to create safe places for other people to share their stories, to work through their stories with us. Because as Christians, right, we love to say this phrase, speak the truth in love, right? We quote Jesus, speak the truth in love, but we often just use that as an excuse for being jerks, right? Forget the love part. We're like, I'm just saying it in love, brother, but da-da-da, and we're just like tear someone apart. And we're like, wow, that's really love. It's all about love. But what if speaking love to others, speaking truth to others, involves more listening than speaking? What if it involves creating a space for someone to actually share their soul with us so that we feel like we are intertwined in a relationship with them and able to actually speak truth in love? You know, it's been so beautiful pastoring our downtown congregation for the past few years. Basically, exclusively in a pandemic. I was there for a few months and then that happened. And I've seen this in amazing ways. I've seen how welcoming and beautiful the community has been down there. This old reverend building became a place for so many marginalized people where they found safety and entered in with the hope of encountering Jesus and experienced it through the hands and feet and words of those people, just even the greeters. You know, I never saw someone come into a service downtown and ask to leave, regardless of their sexuality, their housing situation, ethnic or socioeconomic background, or whether they were struggling with addiction, maybe even in the moment. It has been a place where the inside of the walls looked the same as the outside, as in the community reflected what was around it. It's been beautiful. I've seen this in action as well through working in the same building as Hope House. I don't know if you knew this, but every day if I walk out my office door, I was in the Hope House Cafe where everyone would come to find practical needs met, but it would also be a place where people would find safety and security. I've met so many incredible people and heard so many stories that broke so many stigmas in my head, where I remember meeting a trans woman who was attacked the night before and had nowhere who would accept her, but found safety in Hope House and in the people there. I remember meeting a man who had no housing because his landlord decided to raise the rent. He could no longer afford it or afford anywhere to live, and this was now the only place he could find safety. I remember the person there struggling with paramedics and professionals because they were overdosing, because someone decided to lace their normal dosage with fentanyl and they couldn't barely survive. I've seen the way people continually have sacrificed and poured out love on other people just who were completely different than them, who were struggling and in a hard place. Why? Because they saw the humanity and the image of God in these people. And I think that's what it means to love, to sacrifice, to abandon our pride and our judgment and humble ourselves and just love people. Meet them where they are. And for some of us, we find this, yes, absolutely. It's so easy to love those outside of the church because we see it as a sense of mission and purpose. I'm going to love them well. But some of us struggle to love those inside the church. Right? Look back at our passage today. It ends with this little section. It says, "By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." I think this verse is very profound. How will people know who follows Jesus? By the way they love each other. You know, elsewhere we see what's called the greatest commandment, where Jesus says, love God, talks about our vertical relationship, and loving others, our horizontal relationship. But when we think about love others, we think about serving the world. But we then fight with those in the pews and in the chairs with us, or even those who are on the stage. And maybe we think that we have this audacity to say, oh, it's all love people as a mission, but if you come in here and you're not the same as me, I don't know if I can love you. We struggle with the each other. I can love the other stranger who I don't know, but the each other, sometimes we fight with each other. And this is, it kind of reminds me of the classic cliche Christian phrase, calling each other's brothers and sisters in Christ. It reminds me of real families. You don't get to choose your siblings. I love mine. You don't get to choose your siblings, you choose your friends. And the same thing is true for your church community. You don't get to choose everyone who shows up. And sometimes you have to love people who you didn't want to love, but you get to. And I believe that the church must be a place where people with opposing opinions, different backgrounds, different lifestyles, contrasting convictions enter into a loving relationship with each other because of the common denominator of Jesus. We say it all the time here, it's about unity, not uniformity. In fact, this was so important to Jesus that one of his last prayers, I'll summarize a bit of the verses for you. He says these words in John chapter 17. He says, I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, through the disciples' messages, that they all may be one. Jesus' prayer, he's praying to God before he's about to be crucified. And he said, my prayer for these people is that they would be one. I in them and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Just like how God is in relationship as a Trinity, he's saying, I want my people to be in unity as well. And he says this, the world will know that you sent me and have loved me, even as you have loved me. The world will know your love, God, if your people are united in love. Wow. We can think of many clever strategies and marketing campaigns and ideas of how to reach our world and help people know Jesus. But Jesus is saying, actually, the way people will know my love is if they love each other really well. Everyone will say, wow, look at those people. Look at how they love each other. I believe this needs to be our identity, your identity. I've experienced it, and I think we can experience it in greater ways. Imagine the stories in town. Man, did you hear about those people up at Lakeside? Did you hear how they love each other? I know. I wouldn't talk to that person again after that, but they actually have dinner together. Imagine the impact in our community. Imagine if the whispers and murmurs after services or even in our own church wasn't complaining about different song styles or complaining about theology or sermons or different people in our church, but instead it was like, oh my goodness, can you believe how well I was loved by that person this week, and just can't stop talking about that? Imagine if we actually let down our barriers and our guards and loved each other relentlessly and recklessly, so that's all we could talk about. And perhaps I can share a couple ways that I've experienced this over my years here, because you guys have done this in many ways. One that comes to mind is 3 years ago. I was about to start my job as the pastor of Lakeside downtown on a Sunday, and on the Friday before that, I got a letter from my landlord saying, you have to move in 60 days. We're coming, living in your house, and you got to find a new place. And I thought, oh my goodness, okay. We were so excited to be living and working downtown. What are we going to do? So we really quickly found a home, and I actually got to experience the love of Jesus through some of you who showed up at my house with paintbrushes and tools and said, how can we help you get your house ready to move into? I've experienced the love of Jesus through paintbrushes that day. Another way, as I've sat in coffee shops with so many of you, chatting about things, wrestling through things. And the beauty is, we didn't always come to the same conclusions. A lot of times we've disagreed with each other, but we're still friends. I think that's beautiful. And I experienced the love of Jesus in your pursuit of a relationship with someone who doesn't see things exactly as you do. I've seen the love of Jesus in youth conferences, where I saw leaders praying and begging Jesus for a student to encounter him and experience life change. I remember one conference in particular where I just felt overwhelmed by the Spirit's presence. And I said to our leaders, we need to go and pray with every student right now and to just see the love of Jesus evidenced through hugs and tears and stories that hadn't been shared before. I remember many times praying for volunteers. God, we need people. We can't do this without them. And time again, Jesus would bring another person in who says, I just want to love people. How can I serve? Where can you use me? I remember one day creeping out, new people who was their first Sunday at church downtown. And on a Friday night, I said, God, I need more volunteers in our kids ministry and on our worship team. And this couple showed up and said, yeah, normally we're looking for a church. We've been serving in worship and kids. And I said, you have to come here. I prayed for you. You better serve. And you can't go anywhere else. And they're like, well, I guess not if it's from the Lord. And so we actually continued on. They had to end up moving to a new city, but we continued having a great relationship and a friendship. And I'm so grateful for that. I remember experiencing the love of Jesus through how many encouraging words and letters you guys have given me. I have a file cabinet full of cards from Lakeside people just sharing their love. And it's like, I don't want to open it in the next couple days or weeks because I probably will cry. But it's just been so beautiful to see. I am so grateful for your love towards me and my family. That my kids were able to encounter Jesus. My wife was able to encounter Jesus through your love. That I will never forget that. And so, church, I wanted to speak on this topic of love and the vast importance of loving others for two reasons. The first thing, it's been my experience here. I thank you so much for the way you've loved me, the way I've got to see you love each other. And I'll never forget it. But second reason is I don't want you to ever lose that as a part of who you are. In fact, I want you to have more of it. As we felt that push towards self, may I encourage you to actually push towards others. To live out that calling, that vision to be a community that helps people discover and fully follow Jesus, primarily by loving recklessly. And so where do we start in that? How do we do that? How do we love better? Well, I find one of the things we can do is reflect on how we've been loved. Remember how others have loved us so well. And so what I want to do is take a moment before I head out and just sit with God. And I want you to reflect on how others have loved you. And then we're going to take some time to ask God, how can we love well towards others? How can we focus on our stories of love and on those that have yet to be written? And so will you join me in prayer for this time? God, we thank you that you are love. That you saw us, that you created us, and that you decided to live among us out of your deep love for us. God, we thank you that love isn't an abstract term only, but it's tangible. God, you've loved us in many different ways, and so have your people. And so I pray that you would bring to mind right now a few of the different ways we have experienced your love. God, we thank you for the embraces in hard times. We thank you for the meals on lonely nights. We thank you for the relationships that endure hardships. God, I thank you so much for this community. And I have great anticipation and hope for how they will love this city and this world well. So God, will you bring to mind someone or a group of people we can show love to this week, each individually? Maybe in this church or outside of this church. God, will you show us how to love well? Show us where to remove pride. Show us where we need to sacrifice. Show us where we need to be open. One of the things I love about Scripture is it's basically a memory book. Here's all some amazing things God has done. Here's some things God is going to do. And I want to ask you to remember for a moment. And as I bless you before I head out, may you remember that God has created you out of love. May you remember Jesus' sacrifice and his triumph over death in the power of love. May you remember the gift of the Spirit that you have received in love. May you remember those who have shown you the love of God, walking with you in the valleys and atop the mountains. May you remember those who still need to experience the love of God, those in your circles and those outside your walls. And may you radiate the love of Jesus in all you do, because the power of his love lives inside of you. Thank you for the past 9 years. You are loved.